one of our most experienced solution engineers, Rune Botten, he's kind of like putting it out there. So I'll get to it, what we are actually going to do. There's a Mac. This Mac is connected to the same Wi-Fi as all of you. And to that Mac, he are streaming a screen sharing from his iPad. And with that iPad, he will give you kind of like a demo, as it were. It is a story, it's about a story about structured content, but it is also a product demo of a certain product that you can see kind of like under there. So yeah, I don't know how many points of failure we have, but I'm in awe, as it were. Rune, welcome to the stage. So Rune is going to show us a story about structured content at work. How can it actually look like? So yeah, break a leg.
Don't break a Wi-Fi.
Right.
Okay, thank
yeah,
you.
turn off all the Netflix streaming, by the way.
We're going to try this and see how it goes. Yes, this is a live product demo. You probably want to keep an eye on the screens because that's where most things are going to happen. I'll be trying to tell a story, but it'll be happening on these screens. And no NPM installs, please, if anyone's working. Let's see. So this has been 2 days of hearing about and thinking about structured content. And many of you probably have ideas of how you can use structured content in your own organizations. Maybe you already are. But what we've done here now is to illustrate structured content, how it can work at many different levels of an organization as it scales and grows, by taking a handful of real-world examples of what our customers are actually doing, a bit of poetic license, and we've staged it inside of our product, inside a Sanity Studio. So let's see, let's start the scary part of this tech. It works. Okay, so we'll tell you a story. Imagine that you love layer cakes. And it's not very hard to imagine. Most people like layer cakes. And they remind you of being 6 years old and your mother made you cheesecake with indestructible, crunchy toppings that gave you superpowers or something. And you grow up and you become a really good layer cake baker. And your layer caker social media handle is blowing up and everyone's telling you, this is the best layer cake I've ever had. So you decide, maybe I should start selling these cakes. So you open a little hole in the wall in Hayes Valley or something, and you start selling your cakes. And you're telling the story of the cakes, but you think, maybe if I had a website, more than just this social media feed that just drowns out in everyone's feeds, I can control the user experience of the narration around these cakes, why they're special. Classic use case for a website, right? So we can make a website. And what do we need to do that? We need some content, and we need a way to edit it. What you're seeing here is a Sanity Studio. On the right is an edit form for our current idea of a cake, the structured content. And on the left there, normally used for live previews of content in a studio, we're using this space to illustrate the concepts that I'm talking about. So that's the cake that we are currently making and selling. So to create our website, we've added a name for cake, how much it costs, crucially, a place where we can do our storytelling about these special powers that our cakes give you, and of course, a compelling picture of the cake, so you want to buy it. And that's really all we need to create our first simple website. We take these fields, we render some HTML, easy, done. People love it. They can come to our website, they can read more into these weird stories of the cakes themselves, they can click and collect them. All of a sudden, our Hayes Valley hole in the wall is just filled up with people waiting for cakes, which is great, we've grown. It's also a bottleneck. So where do we go from there? Well, delivery services are pretty popular. You have DoorDash, Uber Eats. Maybe we could add that to this. And what does that take? Well, with a bit more structured content, at least we get some part of the way there. So you'll notice now on the right, I've added more fields to this concept of a cake. It's not just the description, the picture. We've now added a stock keeping unit number, or like a product ID. We've added prep time for the cake, and for some reason, this cake takes 2 hours to make. There's a long wait if you order this cake, and there's a hole in the wall, so there's no inventory apparently, but that's fine. How many calories maybe, things that are important when you're not face-to-face in the hole in the wall, can talk to people of what's in these cakes. Maybe you need to communicate in different ways now. So you encode it here on the cake, what allergens are in the cake. Does it have gluten, for instance? These are things that the delivery services need. Now that's not enough to get the cake on DoorDash. But you have a friend who's a programmer and you cut a cake deal, and she takes these values and feeds them into the API of DoorDash. And that is really all you need. And suddenly, you're selling your layer cakes on DoorDash. Great. And a great success again. People are now lining up to get cakes. They're lining up to pick up cakes. They're eating cakes. Everyone is loving the cakes. You're still running your social media account, so that's blowing up even further. And now, with your newsletter and everything else you do, you realize that people love the cakes, but they also want to make your cakes. They want to make them themselves. They're invested in this now. And you should help them. You should help them make your cakes. That means you should open source the cake layers. It's a great growth hack. And how we do that? More structured content. Back to our editing here. You can now see on the bottom of the right here, we've now expressed the layers that make up this particular cake with other documents that express those layers. I think I can even explode the cake here, yeah. And you can see them in the illustration. Let's click on one of them and see what makes it up in terms of attributes. Tangy meringue. Doesn't sound right. Tangy meringue? I don't know. It has some properties. Again, there's a name, maybe there's a height in inches. Crucially, there are ingredients and a recipe for how to make this layer. This is how we'll help our fans make our cakes, right? We're describing how to do it. But we can add other things in here that might be interesting to us. Here is our special abilities, these superpowers, this part of the storytelling around our cakes. Can read the thoughts of animals for roughly 5 minutes. That sounds scary. I don't want this cake, but that's fine. We use that in marketing or in the wider storytelling when someone has assembled a whole cake from these layers. And by the way, now that we're starting to break down the cake into layers and even ingredients, let's dive into one of these ingredients here. Maybe this one. Butter. The layer, of course, is made up of ingredients. There's a recipe of how to put them together. But you'll recognize here that I've now taken the opportunity to move the allergens that were on the cake level previously down to the ingredients. That's really where they belong. The allergens, they are in the ingredients, so we move them here. Also the calories. By doing this, we've given ourselves enormous flexibility later when we dream up new layers. We remix ingredients and we make up a new cake of layers we've never seen before. We don't have to sit at the top manually updating, does this have gluten now? How many calories are here now? What allergens are in there? It's all in the connected data. Actually, if we zoom all the way up to a cake again, notice now the calories, the allergens, the gluten, they're all read-only at this level now because they're all just computed, as it were, from the connections in this cake. That's great. We might make use of that later. But for now, we're just trying to help our fans bake these layer cakes. And now we have all we need. We have the recipes. And as with the allergens, we can compile a full recipe of a whole cake, again, from the layers that have their own recipes. So we launched a community site. And people are making wondrous and frightful creations, as communities do. But they're loving it. They're creating content. This is also giving us a great eye into what people like. We can see the data here about what is great with these cakes. We can see what they don't like. Apparently, there's a lot of discussion what's controversial. These are all great data points for us that we can start playing around with shortly. So, we're starting to grow out of this hole in the wall in Hayes Valley now. We're selling a lot more cakes, not necessarily all of these, but maybe we want to. So maybe we need to sort of scale up into a factory now. We've become a big business. We need a factory. But can a factory be structured content? Does that make sense? Let's zoom one level up from this cake in this Hayes Valley hole in the wall. Let's imagine now we have a whole pastry factory in Monterey. At this factory, we're modeling things like, I don't know, the working hours there. Who are working there? We can sync in like HR. Who works there? What do they do? What kind of machinery is available at this factory? Could let us infer what kinds of products we can sell to the markets that this factory is producing for. Taking what we learned from that community site, we can run some experiments now with structured content. We realized that maybe people want personalized cakes, layered cakes. And now we have this factory. We appear to have a build-your-own-cake layer assembly tool. We can feed it any sort of layer description, and it'll make it, in the right order, make a cake for us. So we launch the Layer Caker Editor, the personalization tool for layer cakes. This is all building up on the structures that we've built that have enabled us to get to here. Any layer slot in there, calories, nutritional information, how to make it, all of that is encoded. And of course, all those layers make up a cake. It can be your personal cake for your birthday. You can do crazy things in here. You could do time-limited layers for holidays. You do the Halloween layer. You do the Valentine's Day layer. Maybe you do a co-branded layer with a different company. Or go completely crazy and you do like layer drops that you need to go into the metaverse to find and add, or I don't know. That's the poetic license. Our customers are not currently doing that. But they could, because they're in this space where they're modeling not only the content that they show and the user experiences that they draw up, but also their operations. So you're expanding out, and you probably want to model higher and higher abstractions, like markets, zooming one level up further from our factory. There's 3 factories now in California, 2 down south, in addition to our Monterey location. At this level, it could be interesting to model things like special holidays that might affect the opening hours of your factories or your outlets. You could do newsletter campaigns at this level, measure market satisfaction rate, see what kinds of cakes in this region or this market performs. This should make fairly easy sense. And eventually, you might start modeling whole regions or countries, as in this sense. At this level, other things can start become interesting, like regional regulations. In the US, we have the FDA, the USDA, probably many other DAs that I don't know about, but they're encoded here. What happens when we move or when we expand into Europe, for instance? Different regulations. Let's actually do that. The layer caker business is now opening up in the EU. You'll see there are different regional regulations here. There's the European Food Safety Authority, and there's something else that's just way too long to read out from a stage. The whole idea being there are different rules that govern your operations here. Actually, let's take a look at them in the EU. This is what you need to track. If you're going to make food and sell it and have people eat it, you have to track supply chains all the way down from producers like farmers, through ingredients, your factories, your retail, your outlet, your shops. And you have to keep all this data. And a consultant some business consultant in Germany might tell you to use some sort of arcane ERP software or SAP, or that might be all well and good, but could you store this data in a way so you can also treat it as content? And can you use that content to create a remarkable user experience? Sounds impossible when you look at this, but I'll show you what we do with the layer caker once we are established in Germany. Let's go into Germany, actually. 4 factories in Germany. Let's go look at the Berlin one. And let's take a look at one of the cakes in Berlin. You'll notice now that I'm navigating down the same hierarchy I came up in America. And the structures are all the same. On the right side, you'll recognize this from the first invincibility cake. The descriptions, images, the stock keeping stuff, 30 minutes prep time, wow. So okay, the Germans are a lot more efficient than us, but it's still the same fields, just different content. And it's all in German because this is all regionalized to German, Berlin. Let's go down and see one of these ingredients. Actually, let's go up again. Open the integration map, click on the hidden link that unlocks the next layer, and then go down again. Pardon me. Here we are. This is the butter that we're sourcing for our Berlin factory. We're speed running this, by the way. There's no company that does this at this speed. So imagine years pass by here. Anyways, we're now in Germany. This is the butter that we're delivered in our Berlin factory. That again, of course, goes into the cakes there. One important thing is it organic or not? Just as with the allergens, collecting these organic levels, oh no. Collecting the organic levels of your ingredients, again, the sum of those becomes, is this cake organic? You don't control that on the cake level. If you adjust anything, it just keeps updating by the connections. Again, nice. But there's also the supplier. We know who the suppliers are for our ingredients. We can reach out to them and give them a login and say, hey, if you want to, you could send us some content back, maybe a picture, a little blurb about yourself. Maybe we could use that in our storytelling around these cakes. And we can automate the heck out of that. Just have them come log in, and if they give us content, great. This is Farmer Hans. He sent us this picture. That is Farmer Hans and his cow that made that butter. And it looks like he's playing the guitar, and I think it says he likes soccer. Nice. I feel like I know Hans a little bit now. And it's nice to see his cow. What can we do with this, though? This is really that horrible integration map that I showed you earlier, but it's now more human, and it has some content attached to it. The reason it's here is because we need to follow the food regulation guidelines. There's certain things we just need to do. But we're leveraging structured content to give some more storytelling to it. Let's go up to the cake and see what we do in Berlin with that information. Let's take a look at the packaging label. There's Hans and his cow on the packaging label of that particular cake in that region because he delivered the butter that went into it. And we can tell that story right there. Doesn't need to go on the web page, doesn't need to go anywhere else, but it's there connected to the rest of the content that makes up this cake. All the other fields you'll recognize that we built up during this scale. All the nutritional information is all in German, of course, because we're in Germany now. So this is another example of how treating the different levels in your organization as structured content can be valuable, efficient, and create an opportunity. On these different levels and on all surfaces, not just your website. This packaging label here, for instance, in itself just a small thing in the whole scheme of the cake things. But a great user experience is the sum of all the small things. So as you lean back and now you've conquered the whole world of layer cakes, and building a personalized layer cake is the most natural part of any celebration around the world. So what do you do then? Well, you start working on the next brand, and you think real hard about how you're going to model the entities that you find within. Thank you.
So it looks like the demo gods had mercy.
The demo gods had a hiccup. And
They had a hiccup, or just to kind of keep you on edge, right? Yeah, I would be afraid to go out now. So this was it was a lot of details there. I've been kind of like out of the loop of the like customer acquisition lately. I've been planning this conference. Like, the cake is real, right?
Yeah, that layer cake business? No, it's not real. But it looks very well done because we had a lot of help in making this. So a shout out to Evan at Sanity, at Lars, designer at Sanity, Carolina, and Daniel, who spent hours making all the resources that we saw in there. I'm just the lucky schmuck who gets to just tell the story.
Okay, so it's not a real business yet.
It's not.
By the way,
Could be.
It
That's
could
the
be.
Yeah.
It could be a side hustle, maybe. But anyways, but it's probably kind of real, nevertheless.
It is built on actual things our customers are doing, as I said up top. And if that sounds unbelievable, well, it is believable. I mean, all the Web3 metaverse stuff, no. But all the other things, people are actually driving both their business and the user experiences and the content. I mean, plenty of people use Sanity or a structured content system just to run a blog, and that's fine. But it can be a lot more than that. It can permeate your operations and the way that you think about how you run your business. And that's real.
Yeah, and you should know, because you and the solution engineering team at Sanity, you see a lot of different projects and customers and use cases that have done so for years, actually.
Yeah.
What is kind of like the one thing you wish that people out there can like figure out? Like, what is the advice you don't want to give anymore, if you could choose?
Okay, the number one success thing I see is if you're a developer or you're someone who's just itching to make a new website, a new .com, you have a thing that you just want to have the new thing, and that's what you measure it on, like the launch of the new .thing, right? If you pump the brakes a bit and you think about this stuff, and you start with content modeling, thinking about the universe of entities and how they play together, and you make solid work here, then the projects that you build on top of it will be a lot easier to both integrate with each other, find new avenues in making user experiences. So that will be the number one tip. Yeah.
Seems to be on message.
Seems so.
Yeah. Again, thank you for doing this harrowing act of demoing. Yeah, I was super nervous. And hopefully you will get to meet Rune in a Zoom meeting somewhere at some point, showing you how to set up structured content.
Happy to.
Right?
All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Rune.
Thank you.